All right. Thanks to everybody for coming out. It's an exciting day for the Denver Nuggets. You guys have heard from me from a few times in the last month or so. So I'll just turn it right over to our new head coach, David Adelman.
Yeah, first of all, thanks to people that came out today. And I think the personal stuff I want to get out of the way. I know it's going to sound like I won an Oscar, but I think it's important. First, the Kroenke family, Mr. K, everything he's done here over the years. The support over the last 2 months has been incredible. And then obviously Josh and what we've done together as a partnership before this thing was finalized was really special. And then I have to take some time. My family's here, their support, their sacrifice, what they've done to help me get to this point. My family back home, my sisters, brother, parents, and then really quickly the journey of what this is as a coach. All the way back in Oregon in high school, Gene Potter, Jeff Peeler, Peyton Chapman. People don't know who these people are, but they're the reason I'm here. And obviously, in Minnesota, my father trusting me, on to Flip Saunders, Sam Mitchell, Frank Vogel, and obviously Coach Malone here. So a lot of people to thank. Again, I don't want to be long-winded, but that's what this is. Getting to sit in this seat next to Josh if those people don't support you. So I feel extremely blessed to have one of these 30 jobs and to be the head coach of the Denver Nuggets.
We'll open it up for questions.
Hey, mentioned prioritizing the organization, specifically internally through player development. That's an umbrella a bit. I'm curious what it looks like to you, player development, in terms of your expectations for the players, the approach from you and your staff, and also the expectation from the organization in terms of making sure that happens.
Yeah, I think it starts now. I mean, we have people in this building that are more than capable of creating the depth that we need. It's also me creating a different kind of relationship with these players. Being the head coach as opposed to lead assistant is a lot different. And those expectations have to be defined for them. I need to be active and go see players, make sure they understand what they can do to have an impact on this team next year. And I think it's an interesting thing in player development because your skill set has to get better in the summer, but it has to be aligned with what we're trying to do as a team. So there is a happy medium that you have to meet. All these guys have people they work out with away from this building. We have great people in this building. But we have to unify those relationships, and I think that goes a long way. And I really mean that. I think throughout the playoffs, I played different people at different times, depending on who we were playing, matchups, the series, the opponent. But I expect guys to come back much better, stronger, more confident, and understand the opportunity that they have. People talk a lot about our first five, and they should. It's an incredible first five. But I see a lot of talent in that room. And, confidence, comes from trust. And I think that trust has to be, found throughout the summer. And it can't just be, hey, I'll see you in September and see what happens. So it's a big summer for us. A lot of guys coming back that I know are going to be competing for spots. And that's the biggest thing about the NBA, man. You want competition in that gym, and we're going to have it, and guys are going to compete for it, and whoever earns it's going to play. Just like in the playoffs, I said that, and that will translate to next season.
Sorry about that. How are you? Thank you for taking the time. I guess, given, like you were just talking about, given this, you have a summer and you have a training camp, what do you hope to implement, and what kind of new wrinkles do you hope to add to make it yours?
Yeah, I think you saw some of it defensively. I mean, I think we have to be, much more creative throughout the season. And that's not just zoning or things like that, but I think it gets guys through the year healthier. You can demand a very aggressive man defense, but I think you can change things up. I think we have high IQ players that allows you to be, more variety defensively. And I think offensively, obviously we were top 5 in the league, but it showed in the Oklahoma City series, our execution has to get better. You can run similar things that we've ran that have been very successful. And I thought, our transition game was very impactful throughout the season, but some of that does not translate to the playoffs. And so that's a major goal for us. We have to get back to being an execution-based team. If that takes away some of our pace numbers or whatever the analytics want to say, I think that's okay if it wins you a game in May, as opposed to, playing a game in December. It's a very different style of basketball. And we have to think that way throughout the whole season. So when we get to that point, we can morph into that team. And I think you see the teams that are still surviving today outside of Indiana, they can really slow down and execute. And to Indiana's credit, they're playing at a pace that's absolutely insane for the playoffs. But I think most of the time, the majority of the time, if you want to win big, you got to play slow, you got to be efficient, you got to be clean. So that'll be things we'll talk about throughout the summer going into training camp.
David, following up about the development, players earn roles in the offseason, they develop skills, but implementing them, it seems to me, often takes real game experience and maybe some sacrifice from the team to get guys there.
Right.
What's your philosophy about letting players grow into their role through repetition in the regular season?
Yeah, I think to grow into a role, you have to earn a role. So guys that earn those roles will play. I do believe you're right. In-game experience is better than anything else, but there's a balance there. We know what the Western Conference is. It got better in the last month, with the draft, and obviously free agency and trades are going to happen. So it's a balance of trying to get guys to have game experience while staying in the fight, staying where you're supposed to be to compete for one of those top 6 spots. Because we all saw it this year. I mean, it's the play-in, included the Golden State Warriors. So it's an incredible conference. We know that, but you're right. There's a happy medium. I have to manage that as best I can with the help of the staff to make sure guys are progressing at the right rate. So we have a proper, balance of guys in the playoffs when it comes. But like I said, it goes both ways. You also have to earn that. These guys will get a chance to do that throughout the summer, getting to see them, seeing their progression as an individual player, and then into September, when we have, obviously runs here, if guys want to come in and play, and then obviously training camp's going to be a real thing. And I'm hoping to make sure we get to playing quickly when September rolls around, because you don't have a lot of time to decide. But yeah, I think it's a balance, like most things in life. It's yes, I want to see progression, but I also really want to win games. So we'll balance that as best we can.
Coach, you talked about meritocracy in the playoffs. The playoffs creates an urgency that, for me, creates a buy-in from the players. How do you do that on a Tuesday night in Chicago where you set a guy and he's clearly upset because it's like, what does this matter? Why can't I stay in the final 5 minutes of the first half or the final 5 minutes of a game? What did you learn about doing it in the playoffs that you can apply as the head coach during the regular season?
I will say this. The last 2 years, we've lost Game 7 in the second round of the playoffs. So when we get to December, January, February, and there's small fires to be put out and all those things, and guys aren't feeling it or whatever, I will remind them of that. And we have to understand that if we want to have our ultimate goal, then our professionalism has to be throughout the whole season. And if you want to create, a way about you that's going to translate in April and May, and I keep saying translate because it's what it is, and this is a step-by-step process throughout the season, that will be brought up a lot because we've been this close 2 years in a row of doing something extremely special like we did, in 23. So if guys can't understand that, that's an issue, and I'll make sure that they remember that because we have to understand what our opportunity is here. And as tough as the conference is, we know where we are in this conference. We've been the standard for a long time, and the standard is great, and it's fun to come back and win every year and have a great team. But our ultimate goal is to get to the end. And again, I'm not making blanket statements here. I'm just saying it's a step-by-step process, and what you're talking about is part of that process. And yeah, go ahead.
You have to be aligned, and you're the coach before a GM. Josh, you talked about this. Why were you so comfortable that you could put David in this position before a GM that you could all still end up aligned to get to that next step?
It's a very good question. I think that when you're contemplating changing out coach and general manager, one of the things that I would look at from my perspective is, do we need a complete organizational reset, top to bottom, culturally? And that's why I made the decision at the end of the season like I did, was probably to do a little bit of a litmus test on that. With the benefit of hindsight, I can look back and see that very clearly now. And I can also say very clearly that this organization does not need a cultural reset. I think anyone that was in and around that dressing room for the last 6 weeks, I think could probably say that there was a very unified group. And while I understand that pressure might have brought some of that unification, I also think it was the people in that locker room. I think, a long time ago, when we set organizational standards to get to where we are today, that a lot of that is about culture and a day-to-day thing. Eventually, I need to take a step back from that. The coaches take over that, and eventually the coaches even take a step back from that, and that becomes the players. The players are policing that on a daily basis. And from what I saw and how the players responded, our culture is still there. We just needed to peel off a few things, have a small reset, and I think we're ready to go forward.
I was going to ask a question. Go ahead, Matt. Coach, first off, congrats. I was just curious, how much did you feel like you were able to implement in 3 regular season games and 14 playoff games that you would have, I guess, implemented in a training camp?
Yeah, I would say defensively it was easier because you can put things out there in a walkthrough. You don't get to practice a lot at the end of the season. The playoff schedule was insane, as everybody knows. We were playing every other day. I think the offensive part we didn't get to do as much as we would have liked to because offense, you need repetition and live action. Defensively, you can really talk about small things, depending on what kind of zone you're running, what we're trying to take away. You don't make it complicated. We had our standards defensively in our man defense. It's always been there. But I'm excited for the offensive part of it because you need repetition and rhythm together for that to matter. You can't do a walkthrough. You can put in a set play or first play of the game, ATO, whatever it is, but that's not going to translate, like I said, unless you're really playing. So these guys will have the summer. We'll go talk to them about what our ideas are so they can implement that into their game when they're working on it. But training camp will be really fun for us. And I think it'll be good for the guys. That's one thing about coming back this year. Yes, I'm new in my role, and obviously that's going to be different. We have to look at the staff and make good decisions, but new ideas are good ideas. And I think the guys have to feel like when they come back, it's not just the same. And, some things you try, you end up, throwing to the sides, it doesn't work, but I have to give them something to come back to that excites them. And a lot of these guys have been here for a long time, and that's a goal of mine. And there's so much good basketball out there to watch, to learn from, to implement. And when you have the talent that we have, a lot of things can work. We just have to pick the right stuff to make them feel like they're coming back to something new.
This can be for both of you guys. Over. Hi. What are the details of what will define success for the two of you?
I think it's just a day-to-day grind. And like I said, the ultimate goal is obviously to be the last team standing. And that's easy to say that, but it's day-to-day. Are you winning the day? And if you do that, I think you set these marks along during the season. And to have ultimate success has to be something you sustain. And the personality of the team has to be consistent throughout the season. And that has to happen. I thought last year we were up and down. We had success, but it didn't seem like it was a steady rise. And I think that's the thing you have to feel throughout a year. You want to go into the playoffs feeling that way. And we did have momentum. Josh talked about it. There was change at the end, obviously. We took that change and had the momentum and found a way to win that first-round series. But I want to feel that way in February. I want to work our way to that where everybody feels like we're progressing towards the ultimate goal. So, again, I said it. You can talk about finality all you want, but the bottom line is that it is a process-based business. And you have to work every day to get to your ultimate goal and not just expect it to happen. That'd be my expectation for next year.
To piggyback off of kind of what he said, I would say it's a process-oriented business, but it's a results-oriented narrative. And we're very conscious of that at different times when we set about, when my father and I kind of set about building these teams, 10 plus years ago, start laying the foundations of the group that you want to see play out over time. Success means something different back then than it does today. And so right now we're in what I would say is kind of a very binary position, which is you either have success, which is to win the championship, or you're failing and you're falling short. So, making the second round of the playoffs, losing in Game 7, while we have many positives that we can take away from that, I think that we're most aware of the result, how it ended, seeing the teams that are still playing, where we can tweak our group going forward to give us the best chances to compete against those teams and eventually beat them.
David, over here on your far left. Given the past 2+ months, the way you grew up with your dad as an NBA coach, how prepared do you feel to step into this role full-time now?
Very prepared. I felt prepared when we started at the end of the season, and that's because of the people I've been, lucky enough to work for. Coach Malone was a great teacher, a guy to learn from. I said it, Frank Vogel, Flip, Sam, my father, obviously. When you're around those people and you see how they run their business and their process, it's kind of a cheat code, and it helps you when you get this opportunity. And not to mention, I think I'm ready because I have an incredible support. I mean, with Stan and Josh, Ben, what he did stepping in at the end of the year, the coaching staff, what they've accomplished here, and obviously our players. You can talk about yourself individually, but it's not about me. It's about, are we ready? And do we make sense together? And obviously at the end of the year, we found a rhythm. Relationships, were formed in a different way to be a head coach. So, yeah, I'm excited about the group, and coming together. And are we ready as a group to take the next step? Josh just mentioned it. Are we ready to do what we have to do to make sure when we get to these opportunities late in the season that we can win these games? And, I can sit here and answer your question directly like I did and say me, but I do think it is the group. And when we come back together, we reconvene as a team, I think we're more than ready to take the next step. And like I said at the start, we talked about player development. This is about every man in that room, coming back, being better, ready to win the day. And if we can do that, obviously we'll all take the steps we want to take to find ultimate success.
David, kind of building off that, a lot of coaches in your situation will hire an assistant with head coaching experience. I guess how important is that to you? And then as a whole, what kind of consideration have you given to your staff, and do you feel like it's important to bring in some new voices?
Yeah, that's conversations we're having right now, and those are conversations we're going to have going forward. The staff obviously did an absolutely incredible job. I think sometimes in the media you talk about, well, I stepped into a situation and I had to handle all this pressure, but everybody had to step up in different ways. I do think we'll have to take a long look at everything with the staff, just like you do with your roster, your players, because every year you want to get better. And to talk about what kind of assistant we would hire, that's a conversation we'll have upstairs. Because you want to find the right people, not just people that fit a narrative, outside of this room. So it's about winning games. It's about finding creative minds within your own room that you've been with over these years or outside of these rooms. So it's have to take a complete look at it, make sure if we come back, the right people are in place. But again, I want to say that again, the staff this season, what they did at the end to complement everything that was going on was so incredible. I have nothing but good things to say about everybody in that room.
I guess for both of y'all, but Josh, how much are you going to lean on David or want his input on who the next GM might be in DA? How much do you want to be involved knowing you've got to put your staff together, and Josh obviously has an idea the direction he may want to go?
I've already been thinking a lot about the front office. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to Ben Tenzer, just like DA did. Ben's been unbelievable since he took the reins. This time of year, there's, through the playoffs, there's minimal things that go on in that world from a roster standpoint. But Ben and I have been spending a lot of time together talking about each individual player, how we think we can improve them, as individuals and within the context of the team. Ben has a lot of great ideas of how we can improve the front office, both internally and externally, and I'm also soliciting a lot of opinions outside. DA will come into that process at some point, but right now I think it's just, focusing on getting him the right staff, making sure he has the right pillars underneath him to give him the most chances for success. But we'll come back to that at some point, and as we reach a decision, I'll for sure bring him into the loop. But I think the input will be relatively minimal, because what I'll be looking for is cohesion between those two. And I think that once we decide on that, I think that I'll have a lot of comfort in how they work together, and I think DA will as well.
Yeah, and I also think, just to respond to it, I've been in the NBA for a long time, so you work with a lot of different kinds of people. This business is about cohesion, like he said, and it's all about just moving forward and winning. That's it. So it's not about finding your best friend. So like he said, Ben's done an amazing job. Complementary, thought process in basketball is important. But like I listed, the head coaches I listed, I also worked with, 100+ assistant coaches, different GMs, front offices change, different ownership groups. So that's what this is about. It's actually about whoever has that spot going forward. It's just developing a relationship, sacrificing your own thoughts for the betterment of the whole group. So, yeah, obviously extreme trust in what Josh is going to do. I have my job. I'll do my job, and I'll do the best I can with whoever comes in.
This is for both of you. Your standard over the last several years has been very, very good. And the last 2 years, you've fallen just short of halfway to a championship. On your roster now, do you have the talent to win a championship? And the second part of that, in hiring a GM, do you want somebody to challenge you on that idea or not?
Yeah, I think that it starts with belief. And that was one of our main topics of discussion whenever we made the changes 6 weeks ago, was reestablishing belief in that locker room. So I think if you ask us, there's a firm belief that they can achieve their ultimate goal. Can they achieve that as currently constructed? I think the answer, as Yoke said after the playoffs ended, was obviously no. So we need to take a hard look at how we can raise our ceiling going forward, whether that's internally or externally. As I said last week, I'm actively inviting outside opinion into my process in the front office because I genuinely want to know, what people think of how we've operated. And, to your point, yeah, the standards have gone up significantly around here. And so to feel like, losing a heartbreaker in Game 7 of the second round of the NBA playoffs is a massive disappointment. But from where we were, a long time ago, it makes me proud, but I'm disappointed with where we are currently because we have a real shot to compete. And I think if you look at the team still playing, we feel while, they're still playing, with a little bit of health and maybe a little bit of luck, maybe it could be us, but it's not. And we're very conscious of that and how we need to go about improving going forward.
Yeah, and I would say you never live in the present or the past. So if I answer that question, I would say remains to be seen because what are people doing within these rooms to make themselves better? Because next year will not be last year or the year before or the year we won the championship. It's going to be its own thing, its own journey, its own adventure in a way. And that's the great thing about the NBA is it never stops. And like I mentioned earlier, Dallas gets the first pick. San Antonio gets the second pick. That's going to change. So it's the responsibility of the group to understand that if we want to make that happen, it's starting right now. It's not just going to happen because it's going to happen. And the standard has been the standard here, and we have won so many games over the years. But there's a responsibility from everybody, myself, the staff, the players, support staff, front office, everybody, to understand if we want to have that goal, you can't stand pat. You can't just be excited about having a good season and getting to Game 7 against a really good team in OKC. OKC's coming back. They're going to be there. Minnesota's going to be there. So for us to surpass those teams, everybody in that room's got to believe they can get better. And so it's easy to say, well, we didn't have the roster last year because we didn't win it. Or you can look at it and say, well, how much better can this roster get? How can we maximize what we have? And if we do that, I think we have a great opportunity. As Josh said, we're more than capable of competing with those teams. We showed it. It's just about getting in the right, mindset when those games come at the end of the season, earning the right to be in those games first. But yes, there's enough in there. Obviously, conversations have to be had. We'd love to improve, but you can improve with what you have. And that's going to be important for these guys looking at their summers.
I have a question for David, but real quick, Josh, you mentioned last week the possibility of an outside firm in terms of the GM search. Are you going that direction, or is it more
There's no news on that front.
Okay.
No news on that front. Thank you.
David, offensively, specifically, what's going to change for you, if anything? What stays the same? Or are you planning to have an offensive coordinator, so to speak, or how's that going to look in terms of the delegation?
Yeah, still formulating ideas with that with the staff, going in a lot of different ways. I think offensively next year, though, I think Jamal's not going to miss shots next year. He's going to be on fire all the time. We're going to rely on that. No, I think it's like I said. You have to always be changing with the game, and our players will come back. We've had, things we've ran for all these guys over the years. We have to come back with different ideas, and that comes from different voices. I have to be willing to listen to outside opinions. It's different for me. It was my opinion before being given to someone else. So I think, delegation will come as the staff is formed. And there's different ways to do it. What we've done here has been successful with the offensive, defensive coordinators, with the head coach, but there's other people doing it a different way across the league. And so that's for me to sit down, realize where my comfort zone is with that, and then go from there to make sure we put the right people in place to give these guys the best chance possible to be successful.
David, go back to that top five. Given the way the last 2 seasons ended with conversations about fatigue, injury, lack of depth, are you satisfied with the condition level, the conditioning, and the approach to availability from those guys you're leaning on so much?
No. I think we can come back better. I think we can come back more ready to start the season. I think you can every year. I think every guy comes back, and as they take a year, they get a year older, They're all trying to maintenance themselves through the offseason into the first part of the first games. I would love for us to come back, more ready to go. Because I think the thing that's funny is the year we won the championship, yes, it was a totally different conference. But the bottom line is we got off to a great start that year and just crushed it throughout the season, which allowed us to be right for the playoffs. And it's hard to say we're going to do that because the Western Conference is really tough, but you have to give yourself every opportunity possible to have the best start possible because it allows you to maintenance your roster as you go into the playoffs. So that'll be the expectation. We'll have those conversations with guys. It's not all that simple. Guys are coming off, a really, really tough season. There's mental fatigue. There's physical fatigue. But when guys are ready to get back into it, I think they have to start and understand what the challenge is going to be. And teams that get off to great starts, usually at the end of the year, have the best chance of being healthy in these big games. So that's going to be a conversation with the whole group. There'll be goals set, expectations, obviously private conversations. But yeah, that'll be the expectation to come back in much better shape.
Coach, over the course of the last couple of seasons especially, the team has really had probably like an 8 or 9 man rotation with guys playing heavy minutes. Just in an ideal world, what would you hope for as kind of running things now?
Yeah, in the past, it's always been 9.5 to start the season, and then as you gradually work your way to the playoffs, it usually morphs to 8. But every year is different. You know what I mean? I see 2 teams right now in the playoffs playing more than that in these rounds, in Indiana and OKC. So, it's about progression of our players. And the trust goes both ways. It has to be developed both ways. But yeah, the ultimate goal would be playing 9 guys to start the season. And like I said, sometimes 10. And that's the best way to get through the year. And then I think guys earn their spots. As you play more games, you realize stylistically how you're going to play. And that also helps to know who's going to be in that rotation. So, yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it. Obviously, I would say, the year we won it was more like a 7.5, 8-man rotation. We stayed healthy that year, but the goal would be to have more people in the fold, as we go forward. So I said it before. There's going to be spots open. It's going to be an open competition to win those spots in our rotation. And so guys that come back ready to roll are going to, reap the rewards of that.
David, I know it's the front office's job to add personnel to the roster, but what traits do you see the team lacks right now that can be accomplished either through internal improvement or external? What traits, shooting, athleticism, that the roster needs to add going into next year?
I would say consistent shooting. Obviously, the way we get guarded, and that's nothing new. That's not like it's just for us. If you're watching these series, Shea and Anthony Edwards are getting triple teamed. They're coming from all over the place. And we brought this up during the playoffs, and it's funny, Julian's sitting right here. His game 6, was incredible. And then you saw what Lou Dort did, in game 5. There's a premium on shot making at, the times you need it. And when you get into those moments, it's not just about making shots during the season. I never look at percentages because that's not real when you get in those moments. It's about the repetition, the confidence of making shots in those big games. And, it's a talent. And it's something that can be, I think you can enhance yourself, being mentally tougher, playing in more games throughout the season that mean more. But to me, that's what stands out is just, it's not just making shots, it's making shots in the moment. And how do you get yourself ready for that moment? And I think the guys going through some experiences this year that maybe weren't part of those things the last couple years, you hope that translates to next season because the trust is going to be there. And you saw Nicola, you see Jamal. They trust their teammates, and they're going to get off the ball, and they're going to make the right play. And now we've got to take those steps, whether that's through talking about it mentally, the repetition they put in the summer, the type of work they're putting in, not just getting 100 shots up, but what kind of shots are you shooting? All that stuff matters when you get in those moments. And, that'll be talked about with these guys. But I think that's what stood out to me throughout the season and then obviously in the playoffs.
Coach, I know this decision came down to more than just the players' voices, but at the end of the season, a lot of those first 5 guys really advocated for you to be in this role. Did you see any of that, and what did that mean to you to see that you've already built those bonds?
Yeah, it meant a lot because it's not just the fact that we've known each other for a long time. It was the fact that the situation was going to go one way or the other. And their decision to buy into what we were doing said a lot about them, not about me. and the fact that they thought that they still had a chance to make something out of the season as things were kind of going the other way. And I was actually talking, Andy Miller, my agent's here, and we were talking about this last night, but it was special to see the response from the guys. And these aren't just, random players I took over. These guys won a championship. These guys are some of the most accomplished players in the NBA, not just the last 3 years, the last 6, 7, 8 years that have been through the wars of the playoffs and seen it all. So to develop trust with them during that time was really important to me. That's going to continue. And I want to talk about this before this is over. What you saw from these guys communication-wise is going to continue next year. These guys, this is their team. And what they want to do next year and the goals they have is going to come down to what they want. And I'm there to help, to shepherd this. But this is about them and the success they've had. So it meant a ton to me that, Josh had the trust in me to take over. And then at the end of it, to have the guys feel like things were done correctly, and to have this opportunity to come back, it's an honor. It's an honor to coach the Denver Nuggets, and more importantly, coaching these players. So very excited for the journey next year.
Thank you.
Thanks.